So when it comes to veneers, there are a number of different options to consider. And in this practice at least, these differences are centered on different techniques and materials used. So it's important to understand the available options and their pros and cons. And the first option is handmade layered glass porcelain veneers, which are also known as refractory veneers. Now, to cut straight to the chase, handmade layered glass porcelain veneers are the gold standard. They're the best possible option in just about every situation. And that's because of a number of factors. Feldspathic glass porcelain is very similar to natural tooth enamel in both its optical and its biomechanical properties. And in terms of their construction, layered glass porcelain veneers also mimic natural tooth structure most perfectly. Natural teeth aren't homogeneous in their physical or optical properties. And when it comes down to appearance, it's important to note that all of the color structure comes from within, not on the surface. So similarly, handmade layered glass porcelain veneers are built layer by layer to mimic the stratification that's exhibited in natural tooth structure. So when it comes to the construction of these types of veneers, it's extremely labor intensive, highly detailed, and very intricate. You see, the porcelain in these veneers is built up layer by layer, and it comes in the form of a powder and slurry which is built up and fired in the furnace at various stages. And you can see the different consistencies and properties of these porcelain layers are built to replicate natural tooth structure. It's all the fine details, particularly at the biting edge of the teeth, that are the most difficult to replicate and where the real art is. Because they're handmade from a glass porcelain, we can make them extremely thin, extremely detailed, and extremely delicate in both their appearance and their structure. And just by looking at them, you can tell that these are not only extremely difficult to make, but they take a significant degree of craftsmanship, attention to detail, and an artistic flair. Our ceramists use the best materials and go to painstaking lengths to not only replicate natural tooth structure, but to stay true to the design. And as far as both aesthetics, longevity, and biomechanical compatibility with natural tooth structure is concerned, there's nothing that even comes close. Handmade layered glass porcelain veneers have got the longest term data for survivability. And we know from both the academic literature and from my own anecdotal experience in the practice that these are the longest lasting, most natural and durable restorations that we can create. Academic research suggests that these veneers have got a very high survival rate even after 10 to 20 years. They've also got an inherently unique property that, due to the manner of their construction, we can make them extremely thin, down to 0.1 or 0.2 of a millimeter at their thinnest point. And although they're delicate and fragile outside of the mouth, once they're bonded onto your tooth, they become part of your tooth. We're replacing enamel like for like with a material that's not necessarily stronger or weaker, but in all respects rebuilds and restores natural tooth structure to a pristine state. In essence, you're starting off again with brand new teeth. And my general rule of thumb to my patients is that if you want to achieve the best aesthetics, the best longevity, the best biocompatibility, then there is no other option. And if you can afford handmade layered glass porcelain veneers, this is the go-to. Having said that, they're not the only option. And the second option available to you is milled ceramic veneers. Now, although the materials are similar, milled ceramic veneers differ from handmade layered porcelain veneers because they're precision milled from a single block of material, where the 3D digital CAD design is fed into the milling machine that utilizes robotic diamond burrs to carve the ceramic restoration with high precision. And although these milled ceramic materials do have some simple layering with respect to their translucency, they don't have the same degree of high fidelity microscopic detail that can be created with handmade porcelain veneers. But being precision milled means they're absolutely true to the design that's been demonstrated in the mock-up appointment, and they're extremely accurate. However, because they're a lot less labor intensive, they can be produced and fitted at a much more cost-effective rate. In terms of their strength and longevity, are equivalent, if not slightly superior, to porcelain veneers. Where they do fall short is the fine detail and the 3D microscopic layering that can only be achieved when being hand-built. So in summary, these are a good option for less aesthetically critical teeth. What it comes down to ultimately is that we're sacrificing high-end aesthetics for a reduction in the overall fee, without compromising strength, durability, or longevity. So in essence, from a conversational distance, the aesthetics are more than good enough to fool the casual observer. but not good enough to convince someone with an eye for detail. The final option is composite resin veneers. Now, composite resin, unlike ceramic and porcelain, is a material that's more resilient, less tough, and given the nature of the material, is something that's applied layer by layer in the mouth. And this is the essential difference between them and the porcelain ceramic options. Utilizing different opacities and effects in different composite resins, we can build these veneers layer by layer to mimic tooth structure. Because they're built in situ in the mouth, it gives a certain degree of control with color blending, and because all the finishing and layering is done within the mouth, it is subject to both some advantages in allowing for real-time color matching and some disadvantages in being limited by working around the oral environment and not with the freedom of working in a laboratory. And when you look up close, you can see there are minor defects and flaws, and although they're imperfect, these are a great option when looking at the most cost-effective solution to achieve a great aesthetic outcome. Now, because composite resin is a much softer material than natural tooth structure, it does mean that they're going to be prone to wearing, chipping, dulling over time, and they will need more maintenance than the ceramic or the porcelain options. Having said that, composite resin is a material that can be repaired easily and is always upgradable in the future to more robust options of porcelain or ceramic. In most cases though, composite resin veneers should be considered as an interim or a short to medium term solution. But for selected cases, they do offer the same aesthetic outcome, at least in the short term, as the porcelain or ceramic option. The downside to these is that they will not last as long, and no guarantee can be given to protect these against grinding and clenching forces which are beyond the physical capabilities of composite resin materials. Again, just like the milled ceramic veneers, these can be used in combination with handmade layered porcelain veneers as a hybrid solution to achieve the aesthetic ideal without incurring cost of an all porcelain solution. Given that the composite resin materials are not as durable, it's expected that over time they will need to be repaired, replaced, repolished, and the option is always open to substituting these with porcelain veneers when you're ready. Composite resin veneers are cost-effective, elegant, and relatively simple to complete, and have a minimal impact on the underlying tooth structure. It's important to note that irrespective of which material you choose or technique, all solutions are going to be based on replicating the shape, size, and morphology of the teeth that have been agreed to in your smile design. The material is not going to influence the size and shape of the veneers. It's merely going to influence the high-end microscopic detail in the anatomy and the long-term survivability and longevity of the restorations. Many people have this preconception that composite veneers are completely reversible and that porcelain veneers are more aggressive. That's not the case. Irrespective of what solution we choose, they will all affect the enamel of the teeth to some degree, and no solution is completely reversible. And the important thing to note is that so long as we stay within the bounds of the enamel shell, none of these solutions is going to harm the teeth in the long term. Porcelain veneers and composite resin veneers can be made extremely thin. With the milled ceramic veneer options, they will be 0.1 to 0.2 millimeters thicker by virtue of their construction, but all of these are negligible if the correct technique and attention to detail are employed in their preparation and construction and fitting. So all of these options are variations that I do endorse. They do have their advantages and disadvantages. The option that's right for you is something that only you can decide. And it's not my position that I need to sell you on one type over another, merely to give you all the information that you need and have an understanding of the pros and cons, the appropriate expectations and limitations of each of your options so that you can make the decision that's right for you. I understand that this is a big decision and an important one. There's a lot invested in the outcome, not just financially, but emotionally. And for me, it's a big responsibility. I'm equally invested in the outcome as you are, and I refuse to cut corners or take shortcuts. For me, it's all about the result, and that's something that I'll never compromise on. And my staff and I will do everything we can to create a beautiful result and a great smile for you.